What's going on, guys? In today's video, we're going to be addressing the Maka versus RWBY death battle. Now, a major issue that has been going on for years, not only with Death Battle, but also with other YouTubers, when they power scale Fire Force or Soul Eater, they tend to do this thing where they pixel scale the verse to try to determine how strong these characters are. That's problematic for a couple reasons, because you end up getting crazy analysis such as the moon being like building level or city level. It's just not exactly a good way to scale the verse when you start scaling these celestial bodies with the method of pixel scaling. And the reason for that is simply because the visual representations of the celestial bodies in Fire Force and Soul Eater are distorted by the reality warping madness or despair, making them appear to be smaller than their actual size. Now, this isn't a matter of them losing mass or these celestial bodies shrinking, but a conceptual and perpetual distortion of the environment that they're in. Therefore, any attempt to measure a character's power based on the apparent size of any object would lead to an inaccurate and vastly underestimated conclusion. The characters in question, when it comes to their true power, should be judged based on their feats in the context of their abilities and the series' established power system, not by the visual representation of a corrupted reality. And we know that their reality is corrupted. It's stated multiple times. It's shown multiple times. You have, the realm of Adala, which is essentially our world, being hit with the force of the cataclysm distorting our perception and the perception of the characters in Fire Force and Soul Eater. There's many examples of this where they even question the Kishin zone power, if whether or not if it's simply an illusion, and we find out that it's not just affecting the characters on the inside, which is their mental state, but it also affects the entire environment around them. So we can't say that the moon or the earth is just really tiny, that they're just building level in size or city level in size, because there are many scans that completely contradict one another. They can't coexist with one another. You'll have the moon being as big as continents. Then you'll have Def City, even though it's located in Nevada, USA, you can see Def City towering over the planet. Then you have other scans where the moon is the same size as the sun, not the goofy looking sun, the actual sun. And to actually scale the durability of these celestial bodies and to determine the character's AP and durability, not only by attacking these celestial bodies or affecting these celestial bodies, but even when fighting each other, shouldn't be based on the size of what these celestial bodies supposedly would be. It would be based on the feats that had happened in both Fire Force and Soul Eater. Another thing that's worthy to mention is the Silver Eyes and what that would do in this battle. Screw Attack or Death Battle, they got one point correct about the Silver Eyes, that it wouldn't be able to do anything to Maka, simply because of the fact that the Kishin also tried to do very similar things to Maka and Soul, and he scales massively above RWBY, and nothing happened. Maka was still able to keep pushing forward. Soul has the ability to nullify other people's soul-based abilities, their spiritual abilities. We also talked about how Maka's courage also operates on a conceptual level, so Soul's abilities, Maka's abilities are spiritual, conceptual. They can just negate RWBY's aura. They can negate RWBY's Silver Eyes. They can just passively tank the Silver Eyes. I mean, we're talking about courage and hope within Fire Force and Soul Eater, and we see people like Shinra Banshomon able to passively stand there and resist attacks from the Evangelist utilizing despair, and he was just fine. So Maka could just simply passively resist it. She has help from Soul, who can negate it and nullify it. Soul also has Soul Hack, where he can actually take over other people's abilities and use it against them, being just faster. The speed gap is just so insane that Maka could just leave the area and then just come back and then just finish the job, or blitz RWBY before the Silver Eyes even gets popped off in the first place. And there's just too many counters for Silver Eyes. Silver Eyes really, in this fight specifically, is kind of useless. Another thing I would like to bring up is that there are other people talking about whether or not if RWBY might have a good chance of beating Maka, considering whether or not if Maka and Soul end up not having a good connection with each other during the fight. My take on that would be that was an issue when they had first starting off in the series. Later on in the series, they no longer have that problem. And another thing to mention about that is RWBY isn't powerful enough, and she doesn't have anything in her arsenal that's crazy enough to actually have Maka start stressing about her connection with Soul. And honestly, I don't even think she needs Soul, because there's nothing stopping Maka from blitzing RWBY, jumping on top of her, and just mauling her. The power gap and the strength gap and the speed gap, it's ridiculous. So for them coming out with calculations saying that Maka is just mountain level or something, but then they also said that she does scale somewhat to the Kishin, and I am kind of glad that they brought up the fact that the moon does have the same mass as the Earth. However, they calculated that to being quadrillions or quintillions of tons or whatever. I don't know, maybe that scales somewhere to continental. It's still a downplay, but there's really no actual way to downplay Maka so bad that RWBY just comes out on top. So even with the most disgusting of downplays, with pixel scaling and whatever calculations that Death Battle brought up for Maka's case, there's just no way RWBY was going to win. And we're going to get into the scaling in a little bit, but if you ask me, the lowest of low balls for the durability of their Earth and their moon should be in the star level range at the lowest of low balls. And that is because the moon scales to the Earth. One of the 8 pillars was able to inject so much mass into the moon, if not more mass into the moon, allowing it to fall to the sky or float. So the moon has just as much mass, just as durable as the Earth. We see the Earth being able to tank multiple cataclysms, each cataclysm having enough power to birth stars. We also see that their Earth is durable enough to not only tank black flames as hot as the sun engulfing its surface, but we also see that the Earth actually was converted into a small star. You have Arthur and the dragon literally hitting each other so hard that they're destroying stars. They're using their reality warping powers to draw in nearby stars and to warp these stars into solid footstools to step on them. They destroy them. They can hit each other so hard that their attacks can be seen outside of the vast silvery Milky Way galaxy, and the Earth is enduring this fight. So at the lowest of low balls, when these characters in Fire Force and Soul Eater are threatening to destroy the planet with statements even in guidebooks confirming that they do have enough power to destroy the planet, it should at the lowest of low balls be in the star level range. So that right there already debunks all of the calculations that not only Death Battle did many years ago with their Krona versus Venom, which I strongly disagree with. I don't think Krona beats Venom, just throwing that out there. And this also debunks the pixel scaling methods from other YouTube channels that try to scale the characters in the verse by pixel scaling these characters. And this is why it's very important to understand the context of the cosmology that they're in. Reality has been distorted. Pixel scaling doesn't work. So I would recommend that you guys stop doing that, because it's just a misrepresentation of what's going on. And it's me essentially just trying to help you guys out, because if you are relying on pixel scaling for Fire Force and Soul Eater and you end up in a debate against me or someone like me, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You're not going to know what to do. So I'm kind of trying to help you guys out a little bit. Pixel scaling doesn't work too well for a fictional universe such as Fire Force and Soul Eater. You can do it with many other verses, but Fire Force and Soul Eater, definitely not the verse where you want to primarily have your arguments sitting on, pixel scaling. It's not that strong of a stance, and I wouldn't recommend that. So with that being said, when it comes to RWBY versus Maka, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know much about RWBY besides what I've read off of comic vines and Reddit forums. I actually saw other YouTubers scaling RWBY, and we're gonna talk a little bit about her and the other characters that are in RWBY, but this video is primarily going to be focused on Fire Force and Soul Eater in regards to Maka's scaling. And I think after we get done talking about Maka, and then just briefly mentioning the best showings in the RWBY verse as a whole, you guys will be able to see that not only this battle is completely one-sided, but not trying to, you know, put down the RWBY fans or put down the RWBY verse as a whole. It's just, it's not really a close fight, and it's just a one-sided stomp. So to determine how strong Maka is, it's pretty simple. We would essentially have to do a bit of inverse scaling, because we need the context on where she would scale within the hierarchy of characters that are from weakest to strongest, and we're going to go over that now. So Maka was able to scale relative to the Kishin towards the end of their battle. She wasn't able to essentially defeat the Kishin and destroy the Kishin, but she is just as strong as the Kishin and just as fast as the Kishin. She has impressive feats against the Kishin, such as tearing through his chest not only once but twice, being able to outmaneuver some of his attacks. Even in base form, Maka is tanking some of the most strongest attacks that Kishin Ashura is dishing out, and she's totally fine. So with that being said, Maka at her best would scale relative to the Kishin, and honestly the only real reason why she can't put the Kishin down is because the Kishin transcends the concepts of life and death, because of the fact that as long as there is despair, the Kishin will always exist. Despair comes from the collective unconsciousness of humanity, which is all of humanity's darkest thoughts, which would include the concepts of anger, hatred, anxiety, all these different concepts. So as long as humans have those concepts in their minds and in their hearts, the Kishin will never go away. If it wasn't for that, the Kishin probably would have most likely just gotten jumped, and they wouldn't have to have relied on Brew to seal the Kishin away, and they would have more than definitely just killed the Kishin over time. But because of his immortality, in that sense, they just didn't know how to put him down and save the world that way, so they had to seal him away. So like I said, to find out where Maka scales in the verse of both Fire Force and Soul Eater, we kind of have to talk a lot about Kishin Ashura, because this is a demon god. He's an absolute monster, and Maka was in the pocket with him and did pretty good. So with that being said, the Kishin scales above both Shinra and the Evangelist. I'm going to give a detailed explanation to why. The Kishin's superiority stems from a power set that is not only conceptually more versatile, but is also fundamentally greater in magnitude. He is not inferior nor equal to the other two. He is a synthesis of their powers and so much more. The foundation of the Kishin's power is his lineage as a fragment of Lord Death in his prime. In the aftermath of Fire Force, Lord Death became the new god of creation by fusing his own innate power with the power of Shinra, the Evangelist, and all the other godlike pillars, with the sole exception of Arthur, because during that time, Arthur was out of reach. This makes Lord Death the single most powerful entity, whose strength is a combination of his own god tier abilities and the concentrated essence of all major powers from the Fire Force universe. Unlike the Evangelist, who is the embodiment of despair, and Shinra, who is the embodiment of hope, who are locked in a binary conflict, the Kishin transcends this limitation, because he wields a power that embodies both concepts. As the personification of madness and fear, he holds the power of despair. However, taking a deeper dive into these manga panels, he can also absorb and weaponize humanity's courage and hope. This unique ability makes him immune to the primary weaknesses of the Evangelist and removes the singular limitation of Shinra's power. He is the only one who can use both of these powers on either side of the conflict. We see that in the battle of Shinra versus the Evangelist, it's outright stated that hope alone cannot save them from despair. Shinra couldn't destroy the Evangelist and destroy despair. He wasn't strong enough. He only had enough power to send despair into the Soul Eater universe to free their world from despair. The Kishin is not just a god tier entity, he also possesses a weapon that amplifies his power. This is a fundamental mechanic in the Soul Eater universe. Having an internalized weapon partner gives him a continuous and potent boost that neither the Evangelist nor Shinra possesses. This is a crucial detail that further distinguishes his fighting style and power level. Vajra, the original weapon, the Kishin's power is rooted in the fact that he was once a Meister who consumed his own weapon partner. This act was an unprecedented taboo, and by eating his weapon, Asura gained the ability to consume souls himself, which is what allowed him to ascend to Kishin status. He is able to partially regurgitate Vajra from his mouth to use as a weapon. He also has a second weapon, Ragnarok, and he got this from Krona. And speaking of Krona, he is able to achieve a state of resonance. In essence, Krona and her weapon Ragnarok became the Kishin's new partners. This is a twisted and corrupted version of the Meister-weapon relationship. Krona's soul is so consumed by madness that it can sync up with the Kishin's madness wavelength, allowing the Kishin to use Krona and Ragnarok as a tool. So while he gained his initial soul-eating powers by devouring his first weapon, Vajra, the Kishin's power is shown to be so immense that he can also exert control and resonate with another demon weapon, Ragnarok, through the vessel of Krona. This makes Krona and Ragnarok an extension of his power, a new weapon in his arsenal of madness. The Kishin's immortality is a result of his connection with humanity's despair. As long as there is despair, there is the Kishin. He was not defeated in a physical sense, but sealed away by a conceptual act. The device known as Brew and the sacrifice of Krona led to his downfall. This shows that he cannot be simply overpowered by brute force in a raw fight. His power set, which includes conceptual-based energy attacks of both hope and despair, as well as the ability to drive people insane on a conceptual level. This makes him a far more dangerous threat than either Shinra or the Evangelist. The Kishin is also infused with the power of Brew. The union with Brew greatly amplifies the Kishin's power, allowing him to attain a new level of knowledge and further spread his madness of terror. Brew's ability to unlock a soul's hidden potential gives Asura the boost he needs to become even more of a threat to the world. So in conclusion, the Kishin is a being who has inherited a portion of Lord Death's power, which itself is a fusion of his own immense power, the concentrated power of the Evangelist and Shinra, and all the other godlike pillars except for Arthur. He can wield both hope and despair, has two unique weapons, soul resonance to amplify his abilities further, and is immortal on a conceptual level for as long as there is despair, there is the Kishin. This makes him by far stronger than Shinra and the Evangelist, but not Lord Death in his prime. Regardless, this scaling chain demonstrates the horrific and monstrous power that the Kishin offers both series. So for those who still aren't sold on the idea that the Kishin towards the end of Soul Eater is the second strongest character to ever appear, being only behind Lord Death in his prime, you got to think of it like this. Based on everything I said, the dude's on steroids. He is basically the manifestation of everyone else's power up to this point. Even though Shinra and the Evangelist have better feats than the Kishin, I brought this up on a live stream with a couple buddies of mine, it doesn't mean that Shinra or the Evangelist would beat the Kishin. It's actually the opposite. And we know this because, for example, Master Roshi from Dragon Ball has better feats than the Grand Priest. Goku from Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball Z, doesn't matter. He has better feats than the Grand Priest. Vegeta, same thing. Because the Grand Priest literally hasn't done anything. But just because Goku, Vegeta, Master Roshi, all these other characters have actual feats and impressive feats on top of that, that doesn't mean that they would be able to beat the Grand Priest. Narratively, the Grand Priest is on a completely different level, even though he has literally done nothing. So that's kind of the situation we got going on here. Even though Shinra and the Evangelist have way better feats than Kishin Ashura, based on the context of the story and how the Kishin Ashura was created, the amps that he had acquired from both Shinra, the Evangelist, Lord Death, all the other pillars, his own power, the two different weapons, Brew, resonating with Krona. Narratively, contextually, the Kishin is an absolute demon god. He's a monster. So that's why the Kishin would scale that high in comparison to everyone else. And Maka, towards the end of this fight, is standing in the pocket in durability, in strength, attack potency, speed, you name it. Maka is actually throwing hands with him, and she's doing fine. So what does this mean? Where does this scale her? Well, this scales her, as I said earlier, if we're scaling off the planet based on consistency, she should, at the lowest of low balls, be star level. She should be anywhere from multi-solar system level. Arthur and Dragon, there are panels of them affecting numerous different constellations. In terms of speed, she should be MFTL. Kishin scales massively above those guys. We also have higher end showings of universal scaling, such as Sho, one of the 8 pillars. He's able to control his own universe. He can send out his power to actually exceed the expansion rate of the universe. You have Lord Death in his weakened state, who's weaker than Kid, Blackstar, and Maka and the Kishin, still having enough power to create the Death Room. The Death Room is described as being a separate universe. It's also described as being a place where it can forever house an infinite number of souls, which could be considered multiversal, because souls innately would be 4-dimensional objects because they're not restricted within our 3-dimensional realm. They're astral. And a realm that can house an infinite amount of 4D objects would be either infinite 4D or baseline 5D. You could definitely interpret that with the high ends. You also have other types of scaling with Adala. Adala can be considered an outer versal or fictionally transcendent realm. Adala is a realm that is essentially created and made up of the collective unconsciousness of all of humanity, not just humanity's hatred and anger and anxiety. It's also made up of like humanity's courage, humanity's hope, humanity's love, things like that. And this would also include the concepts of time and space. It's the collective unconsciousness of all of humanity. Like anything that humanity has ever thought of, this is what Adala is. And they actually have some crazy speed feats. You can interpret them as inaccessible speed feats, even immeasurable speed feats, being able to go back into the past, being able to go not only into the past, but the past is our world, you know what I mean? So that could be immeasurable. You could even stretch it to irrelevant. The Kishin scales above that. Maka's doing fine against the Kishin. The only problem was she had no way to actually finish him off. So yeah, you can definitely argue outer versal for Fire Force and Soul Eater. There's high-end arguments for even fictional to transcendence. Maka has her own feats. She was inside of the Kishin's body. The Kishin stated that this place that's inside of his body is an entire world. But it's like, okay, so is it a planet? But like, what does that mean? There's no planet there. And it's like, well, when they say world, they typically refer to the cosmos. The boundless cosmos. The cosmos that's also been referred to as like an endless void. You know what I mean? So when they say the world, for consistency, they're typically talking about the planet, but for higher end arguments, they're talking about like a universe or something that would be multiversal or even outer versal or even fictionally transcendent, depending on your interpretation on where you want to scale that for consistency or try to go with the highest end arguments. Maka's able to fly through these realms, so it's anywhere from like infinite to inaccessible to immeasurable. It's either one of those, but regardless, her speed is absolutely insane. And just being able to box with the Kishin, having been amped with all of these different people's powers, massively faster than light. I mean, we're talking billions to trillions of times faster than light. You got Arthur and Dragon who scale nowhere near the Kishin. They're going through dozens of solar systems, through entire constellations. They're smacking each other so hard that their attacks can be seen outside of the galaxy in just a few moments. You have other crazy feats even earlier on in Soul Eater, like within the first 10 chapters. Soul wavelength and soul-based abilities are described as being light-based. They act like light. They're described as being light. And they're dodging these attacks since the first 10 chapters, so massively faster than light. It's ridiculous. So she's anywhere from star level, multi-solar system, galaxy, universal, multiversal, outer versal, fictionally transcendent, MFTL, infinite, inaccessible, immeasurable, or even irrelevant. And I know some people have an issue with irrelevant speed, but you know, you could definitely scale Maka to a whole bunch of crazy levels. I think consistently Maka should be at the lowest of low balls. She should be star level and massively faster than light. Consistently, she should be anywhere from multi-solar system, galaxy plus, maybe universal, with like infinite speed to maybe inaccessible speed based on all the scaling and scans that I provided. With higher end arguments, you could say that she's outer-versal, if not fictionally transcendent, with a measurable to irrelevant speed. So, when it comes to the RWBY portion, now that we've gone over all of that information about Fire Force and Soul Eater, I'm not going to lie to y'all. RWBY is kind of cooked. I mean, you can get RWBY faster than light. Based on some YouTube channels that I've seen, you can scale her off of like Penny. Some of these characters pop off lasers. You can get her FTL plus. I don't know how you would calculate that, but it's not as impressive as sending attacks outside of a galaxy. She's never done anything like that. She hasn't fought anybody who's done anything like that. In terms of speed, yeah, FTL plus maybe, like a couple times faster than light. I don't know if that's consistent. I do know that she dodges bullets a lot, missiles, lightning strikes. I don't know if her being faster than light would be a highball, but I haven't seen anything personally on the Reddits and the comic finds and other people's YouTube videos demonstrating her speed to be anywhere significantly of a threat to Maka. When it comes to her attack potency, it's also like all over the place as well when it comes to her attack potency, because you got her being anywhere from like small building level, multi-building level, maybe even city block, multi-city block, town level, small city. I don't know. It's somewhere in that range. I haven't seen anything too crazy. I mean, like, come on. These characters in Fire Force and Soul Eater are literally splitting planets. RWBY's never done that. RWBY hasn't fought anyone who's done that. And as far as I'm aware, she has no statements being implied to do anything like that. Honestly, the only characters in RWBY that impress me that could actually bang it out with some of the strong characters in Fire Force and Soul Eater would be like the Dragon Gods. They have planetary to multi-solar system level feats and statements with higher in arguments, scaling off of the relics that they created. I believe one of the relics was stated to have infinite power, so like you can say universal. Maybe you can get them the multiversal, but I don't know. I think the dragons would probably be a threat to some of the pillars, but they probably wouldn't be able to clear the pillars. And I don't think they're going to be able to do anything to Shinra Banchoman, let alone the Kishin, let alone Maka, who fought the Kishin. Maka definitely did have help against the Kishin, but she definitely got her own feats against the Kishin in that fight. So even the strongest characters in the RWBYverse, they don't impress me too much, and they kind of don't match up. Like, what I'm trying to say is the fight isn't close. And it's rough out here. And back to what I was saying with Krona and Venom, I'll probably discuss that in a later video. I definitely don't agree that Krona should have won that. And yeah, I'll get into that in a later video. So yeah, with all that being said, hopefully you guys learned something. This video wasn't really to, like I said, to put down RWBY as a show or as a character or the fans. This really is just me trying to get the information out for everybody to acknowledge, because like I said, for years Death Battle and other YouTube channels keep pixel scaling Maka and Soul Eater and Fire Force characters to city level, and that's, to me, that's not right. They're at least star level at the bare minimum. You can even go planetary if you want to, but they're at least star level. I just wanted to show you guys how strong these characters are in both Fire Force and Soul Eater. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.